What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. Welcome to Sales Talk for CEOs. I am excited to have an expert in revenue operations on the show today. Now, I think this is so important because so many organizations are trying to scale. They're trying to grow quickly, and many of them don't really have the understanding and support that they need. Now, I think that RevOps in and of itself, a lot of people just misunderstand or really don't understand what RevOps is and what does a leader of RevOps do? And even what's the difference between SalesOps and RevOps? We're going to talk all about that today with my guest, Eddie Reynolds. Eddie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Alice.
Well, I'm really excited because I have not had a revenue operations expert on the show yet. And I know this is a very hot topic. And we need to dive in and really just begin by understanding what RevOps is. So let's talk about that first. What exactly is revenue operations when I'm talking about, okay, your organization needs RevOps. Well, I've got a CEO, I've got a CFO, I've got a COO. Like, what is RevOps? Where does that fit in?
Oh man, I don't know. I'll let you know when I figure it out.
Yeah.
Let me start by talking about some of the problems that we want to solve because I think it's more relatable. So one way to look at RevOps is just an evolution of sales ops and marketing ops and a more holistic approach. But let's talk about some problems for a moment. You know how you have this age-old problem where marketing and sales are misaligned. Marketing is generating a lot of leads. They hand that over to sales. Sales is not following up with those leads. Sales is pointing the finger back at marketing, saying these leads aren't any good. And marketing is pointing the finger back at sales and saying that the salespeople aren't doing their jobs. That is a classic problem that we all can understand and relate to. And when you have separate departments in marketing and sales with separate sales operations and separate marketing operations reporting up through completely separate silos, separate systems, separate data, oftentimes looking at the same information, such as how much pipeline did we create? And marketing has one set of information and sales has another set of information. RevOps was created to solve problems like this. We could take, the next step and talk about customer success and about the disconnect between sales and customer success. And are we selling the right customers in the right way and handing things over, onboarding clients, retaining customers, identifying expansion opportunities. And what RevOps tries to do is to take a holistic view of the entire revenue engine so that the company can generate more revenue more efficiently at less cost, and also do that by providing a better customer journey.
Exactly. Now, I want to pause right there because that's exactly what's on my mind whenever I think about revenue ops. The real purpose for it is customer experience. And I think that people just don't often enough connect those things, right? Yes, you're 100% right that the disconnect between sales and marketing continues on. I'm baffled by it. How can it still be that sales and marketing don't understand they are one, right? They must operate together. They must be aligned. But now with everyone understanding the importance of customer success and that we can't just have a list of customers. We need to have successful customers who are successful using what you've sold them. So when we wrap sales, marketing, and customer success together, right, then they need to report up through a structure that supports that alignment. And in the end, the only important thing is this exceptionally great customer experience that we provide because of it.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about this. How do we get this unified approach? For me, the very first thing is thinking about the fundamentals of the business, the go-to-market strategy, and the goals. So for me, I want to take every team and target them towards revenue. In an ideal world, we talk about lifetime customer value, but oftentimes that's difficult. So let's stick with revenue for now. If we have our marketing team that is doing everything they possibly can to generate leads that convert to pipeline, that convert to the biggest, best customers that the company can acquire, that ideally then convert into long-time customers with high lifetime value, then we're going to have alignment between marketing and sales. Sales is already doing that, or trying to do that, at least to revenue. If we can also look through to lifetime customer value and reverse engineer who we're targeting, all the better. And then, of course, when we get into CS, how does all of that align in terms of the customer journey? And so some of the breakdowns that we will see oftentimes, like let's talk about marketing and sales misalignment, is that marketing teams today are still largely judged on the MQL. So I'm going to take on the role of CMO, or I know your show is primarily for CEOs. So let's say that I'm reporting to you, Alice, you're my CEO. And you come to me and you say, Eddie, I've hired you as CMO and I need you to create as many leads as possible. I need 1,000 leads a week. And if you hit that, you're going to get this kind of incentive compensation. You're going to get this promotion potentially, et cetera, et cetera. And if you don't hit that, your job may be at risk. Okay. I start on day one and I start thinking, how do I generate leads? We find that we put on this webinar, we put on this event, we did this podcast, and we had a few people come to us, raise their hand and say, I'm so excited to talk to sales. I am your ideal customer profile. I'm your buyer persona. I am the perfect fit. And I want to talk to sales about buying your product or service. I'm so excited. I'm ready to go. Great. I got 3 leads. I have 997 to go. How many more of these hot leads can I create? Not very many. So now I'm thinking we need to do a white paper and we need to gate that content so that anybody that fills that out will now become an MQL towards my 1,000 MQLs per week goal. We need to buy some ads. We need to do whatever we can so that I can hit that 1,000 MQLs number. And that is going to degrade the quality of those leads. We then pass those leads over to the sales team. And now the sales team is effectively making cold calls. The customer doesn't want to fill out a form in order to access our white paper. They don't want to get 15 calls from an SDR. They may not be in our ICP. They may not be the right buyer personas. They may not be anywhere close to ready to evaluate our product or service. And now we've created a fractured, friction-filled customer experience while increasing the cost of marketing and increasing the cost of sales, which is how we've gotten here, at least in the B2B SaaS industry, as an industry coming off of the growth at all costs phase. And it's just created a lot of problems that we really need to fix right now.
Yeah, that is so true. I think that we have to be careful what we measure, right? We have to be careful what we ask for. So we ask for leads. Okay, let's be more specific, right? We need qualified leads. What does that mean? They need to fit. They have to be people who are in our ideal customer profile that are most likely to buy from us, not just a list of people who downloaded something or, raise their hand that aren't necessarily qualified. And it does create so much friction. Not only that, I think it makes it really hard for our customers to buy from us. It makes it hard for them to identify whether they should even talk to us or not, but we're trying to force it on them. Hey, schedule a call, right? So I think it's important to really take note of what you said. When a CEO says to a CMO, listen, I need 1,000 leads or 10,000 leads or whatever it is, that is not in alignment with sales. Because in the end, the only thing that we want for salespeople to do is have conversations with people who are likely to buy from them, right? And when we do anything else, it's not helpful. And so we do lots of things today, and I see it every single day, and I know you do too. We do lots of things that make it impossible for salespeople to have good conversations with people who are likely to buy from them. We've got to start to align in a way that makes those conversations possible. So let's talk about what that looks like. So back to what is RevOps and, why do you need it and when do you need it? How do we get this all aligned and how does RevOps help that? Because, I'm a CEO, I know a lot of stuff, but typically 75% of CEOs did not come out of sales and do not know a lot about sales, right? So they need to put people around them that do. But I have a VP of sales and a VP of marketing, or maybe I even have a CRO. Like, again, where does this fit? When do we know, oh my gosh, we need RevOps, and where does it fit?
Well, first, let's be careful with the CRO title. I spend a lot of time, most of my time working with CROs, and the vast majority of them are not covering sales, marketing, and customer success. I can't
Correct.
tell you how often they're just covering sales. I can't tell you often some of our customers come to us and they say, hey, I've been managing the sales team. I am now going to take on the mandate of the CS team or the marketing team. But to make the assumption that a CRO is covering all three of these departments is a flawed assumption. It's
Yeah,
quite rare.
absolutely. It's in a lot of ways, sorry if I offend anyone, it's title inflation, and especially at startups. A true CRO has to have enough financial understanding, right? To really be able to look over the health and the revenue of, like you said, the customer success, marketing, and sales. And the true reason for a CRO is to bring those all together. But then again, they're not really going to be the RevOps person necessarily.
No, they're not. And I won't go too deep into that. We have some clients that I really, really admire that are not covering all three of these departments. One of whom comes to mind who did in his past role, took on a new job with a new company, a very sizable established company. And he talked to me about the pros and cons of taking over marketing, also, the political issues that arise there. And I won't go into that. But what I will say is that if your CRO is not covering sales, marketing, and CS, then by default, your CEO is the lowest level person in the organization that oversees the entire revenue engine. When you think about RevOps, I think about RevOps being aligned with that. One of the visuals that I really like to talk about is Moneyball. I think of Brad Pitt in Moneyball as our CRO, and I think of Jonah Hill in Moneyball as our RevOps person. When you think about what a CRO is responsible for doing, they are trying to accomplish exactly what I described. They're trying to accomplish the goals that I laid out for RevOps. How they do that is by building and managing their team. And that includes having a right-hand man or woman or set of men and women that are able to do the things that RevOps does, from helping them to establish the go-to-market strategy. Who is our ICP? What are our buyer personas? Helping to figure out what channels are working and what channels are not working. Helping to build out the tech stack, which many times people think that's the only thing that RevOps does. And I would make a strong argument that if all you're doing is building the tech stack, you're going to have a broken go-to-market motion. And then aggregating these analytics together so you can see what's happening. So if we take our example of this sales and marketing misalignment, how would we solve for this? The first thing that I would do as a CEO, assuming I don't have a CRO and a VP of RevOps doing this for me, is I would go in and I would say, let's set the right goals. Okay. Let's first make absolutely certain that we have a clear understanding of our ICP, our buyer personas, the pain points that they're facing, what we're trying to solve for them, and we understand who our customer is. And from there, I want to set a goal for revenue. I want my marketing team to be trying to drive actual closed won revenue alongside my sales team. I want to make sure that we have clear definitions along our journey. What is a qualified lead, an MQL, if you will? What is a sales accepted lead? What is a sales qualified lead? A sales qualified opportunity? I would even go so far as to say, what is a stage 2, stage 3, stage 4 opportunity? What is the entry criteria and the exit criteria? How do we get that into our systems, into Salesforce? And many of the companies we work with are using HubSpot for their marketing automation platform. And then how do we make sure that both my head of marketing and my head of sales have the same exact information, the same exact reports, so that they can both see how many leads marketing created, how many of those leads converted to pipeline, how quickly the sales team is following up on those leads, what the conversion rate is to stage 2, stage 3, what the overall close rate is, what the sales cycle is, what the average deal size is, and all of these things aggregate into pipeline velocity. And now we have the same North Star, and at least sales and marketing, I know I'm ignoring CS for now, at least sales and marketing is in the same boat, rowing in the same direction towards the same goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, it's so funny because I was talking about a book yesterday that my dad and stepmother wrote called Selling Machine. And it's all about the funnel. A lot of people call it a pipeline. I prefer to call it a funnel because I like the directionality of that, right? But what you're talking about really is everybody understanding your pipeline or funnel. Everybody understanding how do we put things in the top, what should go in and what shouldn't, and how does it move through? You know, the velocity is important, and the where things get stuck is important. And if marketing doesn't understand that, because what happens is certain leads are generated that will move through the funnel with a higher velocity. Why? We need to know that. We need to analyze that, and we need to find more of those kinds of leads. Other leads will move through at a slower velocity, but they will be a higher dollar volume. They will be a higher volume or higher value. And those might also even be larger over the lifetime of the customer. We need those as well. So we need a variety of types of opportunities to flow into our funnels or pipelines. And we need to know how to generate leads for each of those. And that brings me to, the idea of demand gen, which, we talk about marketing and we talk about demand gen, and so many times those are separated too. And the marketers don't understand demand gen. And I think, again, this creates the misalignment, right? So they're putting bad leads in, right? And they go nowhere and they don't understand. And in the past, marketing has not been charged with understanding how things flow through the funnel. And they have not really been given a number, like you said, in alignment with sales. Here is the revenue number that we need. You are both responsible for this. You both look at the same reports.
Yeah. And for me, that comes back to what is a qualified opportunity. And so I just did a podcast yesterday with Megan Bowen, the CEO of Refine Labs, which is a marketing agency that I really admire and respect. And they have some very strong opinions on this. I've been following them for a while. So I'm pretty intimately familiar with their methodology and signed up for it. This is how we do our marketing. And if I understand them, they are basically looking at leads and saying, if somebody doesn't actively request a meeting with sales, it's not a lead. And for me, I increasingly think of it this way as well. If you're in true demand gen, then your job as a marketer is to get somebody to raise their hand and say, I would like a demo or a meeting with sales. Everything else to me is just a prospect. And when you take everything else and you separate it out and you say, okay, we're going to have all these people downloading white papers and we're going to give that to our inbound, quote unquote, inbound SDRs. And then, we also have an outbound SDR team. Again, I'm using air quotes here for anybody that's just listening to this. And we're going to go get those contacts out of Zoom Info. To me, that is a broken process. Okay. So what you're telling me is I've got like Bob and Jane over here calling all the people that downloaded white papers. And I've got Joe and Jill over here calling everybody that is in our ICP and our buyer personas that we downloaded from Zoom Info. Why don't we take those lists together and let's figure out which of those accounts, not leads, not contacts, but which of those accounts, because let's remember in B2B sales, there's oftentimes 10, 15 decision makers. I feel like every year I look at this, that number goes up. So I can't remember the exact number. Which accounts are most likely to convert based on everything that we know? Which accounts are in our ICP? Which contacts are in our buyer personas? Which of them fit our tight firmographic and technographic criteria? Not meaning, they're in the right industry and they're between 1 million and $1 billion in revenue. Now let's get laser tight. What does the company look like? What is their revenue? What is their niche? Okay, they're in tech. Is it B2B SaaS? Is it something else? What type of B2B SaaS do we do best with? What is their price point? I worked at Salesforce as an AE for 3 years, and one of the things we'd always look at is, do they have a sexy website? Well, if you're not willing to invest money in your website, then maybe you're not willing to invest money in any of your go-to-market technology, and so it's going to be harder for me to sell you Salesforce licenses. You want to get really granular here, and then let's look at the engagement with sales and marketing. And let's take all of that together and let's create an account score so that we can take our entire SDR team inbound and outbound, and let's just have them call the best accounts possible. And as that changes, as people engage with our content more, I did a podcast with Channing Ferrer, who ran SalesOps at HubSpot, and they did a similar exercise, and they were big on the people that raised their hand and requested a meeting with sales. They found that their lead score was kind of worthless, not worth calling. HubSpot gets so many people on their website. And then there's this space in the middle where they found that people that hit the pricing page a certain number of times were actually qualified leads. And those folks were worth calling. And I think it's unique to each business. But how do we take all of that information together and figure out who are the best accounts for our salespeople to call? Let's not overcomplicate it and build all these different silos and different teams. Let's just call the best accounts.
Oh my gosh, thank you for saying that. I am 100% with you. And this is really, I believe, where RevOps comes in. It's in the data, right? So again, we want to make it so that our salespeople are on the phone with the people who are most likely to buy from them, right? And when we take all this data the way you're talking about and we, examine it and run it through the machine, so it's like, hey, we've got all these leads over here and we've got all these leads over there. When we cross reference those, the best ones fall out. Now let's enrich that. And like you said, score these on account and have our teams calling those accounts, preparing messaging that's really targeted at them so that they want to talk to us, right? So that they do raise their hands. And it gives us, more of this ability to balance inbound and outbound when we do this. If we're just scattershot, right? It's just going to be us cold calling and really having very little success, as is proven by every sales team in America today, right? But when we get really targeted around these accounts and we do the right activities because we have the right list now, that will allow us to drive inbound as well. And it will allow, when we're calling outbound, for these companies to start to have some familiarity with us because we've been targeting them.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jeremy Donovan, who used to be at SalesLoft and is now at Insight Partners coaching their portfolio companies, recently published this. His study found that, I forget where the data came from, but it was a large sample size, that on average, at least in B2B SaaS, salespeople are making 1,000 to 1,400 calls or sales activities per opportunity, up from 200 to I think 300 just a few years ago. It's hard to wrap your head around, right?
It is hard. That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. In like a typical SDR, in an ideal perfect world, you want them to create 10 opportunities in a month, or at least 10 meetings. So you're talking, 1,000, 500 or 1,000 activities a day. You can't do that unless you're doing two things to get that activity level. Number one is you're going into outreach or sales loft and you're pressing send all.
Yeah.
And number two, there are not enough prospects out in the market that you can really target a narrow niche where you can win. So you're talking to anyone and everybody, all types of different companies and different industries and all types of different personas. And so then your messaging is in no way relevant to them. And everybody listening to this, and Alice, you and me as well, have received hundreds of these emails where you don't know what industry I'm in, you don't know what size company I'm in, you don't understand what role I'm in, and you are just spraying and praying with this vague value prop that is of zero value to me. And it's so bad that for me, I don't know where you're at, Alice, I will be actively searching for a solution in the market, and I will get 3 or 4 cold inbound emails that will literally say, I have the exact solution that you are searching for right now, and I will ignore it because I don't have any faith that they have any ability to help me and my company, because their outreach is so generic that I'd rather just go do a search and find the company that is a right fit for me than to respond to that cold outreach.
100%. I think that's what's happening everywhere. And again, what are we doing? We're making it harder for our customers to buy from us. If they would have stopped for a minute, right? If they had RevOps in place and they would have stopped and done an account-based approach and they would have gotten the messaging down, right? They would have been able to say something about you, your company, what they understand, the kinds of problems that you try to solve, right? And they would have been able to target the messaging. So you would have gone, oh, yeah, that's what I need.
Yep. And so we just finished a 3-part series on our newsletter, which I believe will be in your show notes.
Yes.
On how to operationalize outbound. And one of the ways that we recommended in this newsletter series is to, do the account scoring, also to do capacity planning and figure out how many accounts can my sales reps call if they take all the right steps, if they do the research, if they personalize the email in the way that we want them to, how many accounts can they actually cover? Like, here's a hint, it's not 1,000 per day. And how do we build out sequences that target one specific industry or niche or type of company and one persona in that company at a time? And then for bonus points, we could break that out into a tier 1 cadence and a tier 2/tier 3 cadence, so that we're going to go in and say, all right, I'm going to target CFOs and B2B SaaS companies with between 10 and $100 million in revenue. Okay, now how much easier is it for marketing and sales together to create really compelling messaging? Hey, Mr. or Ms. CFO of a B2B SaaS company with 10 to $100 million of revenue in the United States that sells a product with 10 to $100,000 ACV. This is one problem that you may have. How much easier is it for the team to get around that and really deeply understand that? And then also, how much easier is it for the rep to go in and then personalize their outreach to say, on top of that canned messaging, I'm going to put something personal into this email or this voicemail. How much better is that messaging going to be? And how much faster is the rep going to be able to produce that better messaging when they are laser focused on one niche type of company and one persona at a time?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the problem is that companies simply don't know how to do this. So here I am, I'm a CEO sitting here going, yeah, that's what we should be doing. Because I look at the emails my salespeople send out and they're terrible. Why isn't marketing helping them write? I mean, look, we all know salespeople are not trained writers, right? Today they need to be. Every salesperson on earth needs to take a writing course and learn how to write good copy because you have to do it and you don't have anyone to do it for you, the vast majority of you. But I think what happens is we think as CEOs, isn't that what our marketing team does? Don't they write the messaging for sales to send out? Don't they know what to write? Don't they know how to do all this? But the answer is no, they actually don't. Marketers write marketing language. They don't understand sales language, right? And salespeople are not good writers. And the whole thought process that would even have to go into, here's our target. We're going to write this messaging for these targets very specifically about their industry and their problems. And then we're going to teach the salespeople how to tailor those to the human then that they're going to send the message to. That just isn't happening, Eddie. I don't see it.
I agree. And part of the reason is because these companies are, we've got reps that have high activity quotas they need to hit. They don't have a good territory list. We're canvassing tens of thousands of contacts or accounts. And not to plug our own services here, but this is what RevOps does. You take this off the plate of the sales team, sales management team, et cetera. There's a lot of application for AI here. I just did another podcast with John Barrows, who did all the sales training for Salesforce when I was there. I'm a huge fan of his. And he talked about how these emails only need to be about 25% personalized. The value prop,
Right.
And honestly, they don't even need to be personalized at all. Relevance is more important than personalization to me. And so if you sent me an email and said, as the CEO of a small bootstrapped professional services firm with high dollar services, you might be facing this problem.
Right.
I would read that email. And I
Absolutely.
never, ever get that email.
No, we never get it. And I would absolutely read it. And I agree with you. The relevance is the personalization, in my opinion. I don't need oh, hey, I see you went to IU. I did too, right?
Oh,
I don't need that. That's don't do that. That's not what we mean when we say personalization. We mean that we're personalizing the message to the extent that you will read it and say, oh, that's me. I have that problem. Let me raise my hand and talk to someone, right? Because that's what we're trying to get everyone to do. This is our target. Let's get them to raise their hand, right? So this whole inbound, outbound mechanism has to work together, right? So that we get more and more people raising their hand. Either they called us on their own or we called them and they said yes, but we're just not having that success. So let's get tactical for a bit here and let's talk about how do we start to do this. So I'm the CEO of a $50 million company in some kind of tech or SaaS, and I have a sales leader, head of sales, whatever that title may be, and I have a head of marketing, and we just don't have enough leads for our salespeople. And someone got the great idea that if we hire more salespeople, that would increase our sales. But there's not enough leads for the salespeople that we have. So here we sit with a very light pipeline or funnel, right? There's just not enough in it. And there's just not enough leads coming in to fill it. Where do I start?
Okay, so let me say two things. One, I know we don't have a lot of time left and we've completely ignored customer success. And I just want to highlight that this is a critical component of RevOps, but we'll continue to ignore it so we can talk about sales and marketing. All right.
Well, we can always get you on the show again, so don't worry about that.
I'm happy to do it. Okay, so we are trying to generate more leads. So your question, there's an assumption inside of that question that salespeople are only there to work leads that are given to them, and I just don't buy into that assumption. So let's just kind of like address
I
that
don't
for a
either.
moment.
So go ahead.
And I don't mean to, throw you under the bus there. It's just, it's a common assumption, especially in B2B SaaS, the industry where we spend most of our time. So I think that first and foremost, we need to build a demand generation engine. Actually, no, that's the third thing. The first thing is we need to make sure that we know who our customer is. We need to get laser tight on our ICP and our buyer personas and the pain points, et cetera. We've talked about that so far. That's step one. If you don't have that, don't worry about anything else. If you don't have that, the problem you're having is you're generating leads with the wrong people and your salespeople are calling the wrong people. You're just wasting all of your time and resources. All right, second step is you need to get a really tight sales process. So before we start filling the top of the funnel, let's make sure that things aren't leaking out of it. So the first step that we want to work with our customers is to say, let's document your sales process. What is an MQL, SAL, SQL, whatever terms you use, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. What do the sales reps need to do in that sales process? How can we see that in Salesforce or whatever CRM you're using? Where's the dashboard and the report? And we would actually build that for our clients so that you can see whether or not the sales reps are taking all the steps necessary to maximize their close rate, the size of the deal, and to minimize the sales cycle. That's the first step. Once we've got that down, now let's figure out how to fill the top of the funnel. And that's two areas. That's demand gen, and that is outbound, inbound, whatever you want to call it. It's calling somebody that hasn't asked you to meet with sales. So I think that the first step to fixing demand gen is setting the right goals, as we've talked about. You sit down with your marketing team and you say, we need to drive revenue, not just pipeline, not just leads. We need to drive revenue. So what does that mean? That means we need to find ways of driving more people to the website. And we need to figure out how to convert more people from that website into leads, into opportunities, and into closed won revenue. And if we are looking at closed won revenue, we can go through the funnel and we can reverse engineer it. And we can say, where are things falling off? Are we getting enough traffic to our website? Are we converting that traffic to leads? Are we converting those leads to pipeline? Are we converting that pipeline to sales? If not, where is the first gap that we need to address? Now, I don't run a marketing agency. I won't pretend to tell you how to generate more people to your website, but it tends to be putting out really great content to your target audience and understanding their pain points. And that's why, Alice, you and I are on this podcast right now. That's why you have your own podcast. It's why I have my own podcast. It's why we have a newsletter. It's why I'm active on LinkedIn. I don't buy ads, but we could do that too. Here are all these different ways we can drive people to our website. That's demand generation if you take it to its logical extension of, is this converting to revenue? All right, now we've got these great leads for our salespeople to follow up on. What is that follow-up process? Are they getting back to those people as fast as humanly possible? Studies show that if you wait just 30 minutes to respond to an inbound lead, and I'm talking about the people that actually want to talk to sales, if you wait just 30 minutes, your chance of actually converting that to even a meeting, let alone a new customer, is drastically lower. I think it's like 10x lower than if you respond in 5 minutes. Why? The reason is that when people research companies, they typically go and look at 3 or 4 companies. They have a half an hour window between meetings. They reach out to a bunch of people. Somebody calls them and engages them, and now they're active in a conversation and they're ready to go. And you call them half an hour later, or oftentimes we see companies waiting a day, 2 days, 3 days. By that point, your prospect is already engaged with 1, 2, 3 other vendors. And they're like, I'm busy. I already did the demo with your competitor. Like, I don't have time to talk to yet another vendor. So we fix that. And then we go back into the cold calling that we talked about. All right, now that salespeople have as many great leads as we can give them, what do they do with the remainder of their time? We want them to be calling the best possible accounts. And where RevOps really adds value is by saving them time, by building out this machine, giving them one-click access to all the information they need to personalize these emails, to prep for these sales calls, to see the reports as to whether or not they're doing what they need to be doing. And I lost my train of thought. That's a big piece of it.
Yeah.
The major piece that RevOps is trying to serve here is just to make the team more efficient and more effective. Are all of our energies pouring into the right place? Like when we're trying to close a deal, are we chasing deals that we can actually close? Or are our salespeople, and this is a huge problem we see, just chasing deals that will never close because they don't know how and are afraid to close these deals out, which then means they don't have any time to prospect. Sometimes it means that they don't have time to get back to these leads. Sometimes we have all of our leads jumbled into one big mess. We've got 1,000 white paper downloads and 3 people that want to talk to sales, and they're not hearing back from sales because they're all jumbled into this like mess. And so where RevOps comes in is to try to bring some sense to the madness and say, let's map out this process step by step, and let's identify the inefficiencies at each step in that journey so that we have a better customer journey and we have higher conversions at each step in that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Analyzing that data and putting that process in place so that salespeople are making the most of every minute of their time. I think it is just so critical. And again, it really brings together. We haven't talked about CS, customer success today, but it really brings customer success, marketing, and sales together to do what's best in that customer journey from hello to I'm your loyal customer, right? So it doesn't end when you close the deal. Remembering, and of course, the bow tie that our good friend Jocko Vanderkoy always talks about, right? It doesn't end when you close the deal. RevOps continues on through that whole life cycle of the customer, and just really thinking about that customer experience and making it easier to buy. Well, we could go on all day, and I would like to, but let's get you back on the show again, and we can talk more about CS and many other things as well. But I would like everyone to know how to find you. So tell us a little bit about your company and what you offer, and then that workshop that's coming up.
Yeah. So in short, my company offers strategic revenue operation services. We have a strategy team that does a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about on this podcast. And we have a tech team that actually implements these ideas into Salesforce, HubSpot, Marketo, Outreach Salesloft, Zendesk, et cetera. They can find us at unionsquareconsulting.com. Again, that's unionsquareconsulting.com. We have our podcast on that website. We have our weekly newsletter on that website. And then we also have a free workshop. And this workshop is designed for CEOs, CROs, and VPs of revenue operations that are trying to figure out, less so for VPs of RevOps, but really more for CEOs and CROs that are trying to figure out how to do this. We have this concept called the revenue efficiency pyramid, where we have stack ranked all of these things I've been talking about into an order of operation. What should you do first? And in this workshop, we'll spend an hour or 2 hours with a company walking through where they're at in their maturity curve and what issues in RevOps they should address first so that they can have their entire revenue team operating more efficiently and ideally generating more revenue with the budget that they have and the resources they have.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds like a workshop that many of our listeners will want to attend. So we'll make sure that's in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate your candor in talking about RevOps and some of the things that we can do to really make a difference at our companies for our revenue.
Thanks for having me, Alice.
If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.